He mopped the same hallway for 15 years, invisible to students rushing past. But when the principal found a framed medal hidden in his supply closet, she realized the quiet man fixing broken lockers had once saved an entire platoon under enemy fire. Welcome to One Human, One Story. Before we continue with this powerful story of hidden heroism and quiet service, tell me in the comments, from which city in the world are you watching this video today? And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us remember that behind every person lies an unforgettable story. Frank Morrison unlocked Jefferson High School's doors every morning at 5:30 a.m. For 15 years, he'd been the head custodian, never missed a day, never raised his voice, never asked for more than necessary. At 64, with silver hair kept military short, Frank wore simple navy coveralls and steel-toed boots. Students called him Mr. Frank when they bothered acknowledging him. Most treated him like furniture, necessary, reliable, but unremarkable. Teachers respected him because he fixed things without being asked. Broken projectors worked by afternoon. Jammed doors swung smooth by morning. When asked how he managed these miracles, Frank would shrug. Everything can be fixed if you pay attention to how it's supposed to work. But no one paid attention to Frank Morrison himself. They didn't notice his military precision, his constant awareness of exits, or how he ate lunch alone, staring at a face-down photograph on his desk. Frank had become invisible by choice. For 15 years, that invisibility had been his sanctuary. Principal Sarah Chen arrived with determination to know every corner of her school. 3 weeks in, she noticed Frank mopping near the trophy case with meditative precision. When rowdy sophomores came barreling around the corner, Frank didn't scold them. He stepped aside, waited for them to pass, then continued working. One student, Marcus, who'd been in her office twice for disrupting class, actually mumbled, "Sorry, Mr. Frank." Sarah had never seen Marcus apologize to anyone. "Good morning, Mr. Morrison," she said. Frank looked up, nodded once. "Morning, Principal Chen." His voice was soft but measured, suggesting careful distance from conversations that didn't go deep. "This place runs smoother than any school I've worked in. I'm guessing that's largely thanks to you." Frank's smile was brief. "Just doing my job, ma'am." "How long have you been in custodial work?" The slightest pause. "About 20 years. Started here when I needed a change of pace." Sarah filed away the hesitation. In her experience, people who were deliberately vague usually had interesting stories. 3 months later, when the heating system failed on a November Thursday, Sarah learned that Frank had somehow restored heat to the entire building by 10 a.m., a miracle the district maintenance crew couldn't have managed until Friday. She found him in his spartanly organized office, writing in a notebook. "Frank? Where did you learn to fix heating systems?" Another pause. "Picked up things here and there." When the fire alarm erupted, Frank transformed instantly, moving with authority that made Sarah freeze in place. "Stay here. I'll check the building." That's when she noticed his desk drawer had bounced open, revealing a wooden box and framed photograph. The photo showed young men in military uniforms on a ship's deck. Third from left. Unmistakably, Frank Morrison. 40 years younger, wearing United States Navy uniform. When Frank returned, false alarm, everything had changed. "Frank, how long did you serve?" 22 years. Navy." "What did you do in the Navy?" "Served my country." But Sarah had seen enough to know Frank Morrison was a veteran with stories worth knowing. The opportunity to learn more came when a burst pipe flooded the administrative wing. Frank had already controlled the damage by the time Sarah arrived. Working together to save documents, disaster struck when Frank slipped carrying yearbook boxes. The box flew from his hands, contents scattering across wet tile. Among the scattered items was Frank's wooden box, now open. Military ribbons, photographs, letters, and official documents spread across the floor. Face up in a puddle was a bronze medal with blue ribbon, unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. "Frank, what is this?" He moved quickly to gather the items, usual calm replaced by panic. "It's nothing, just old Navy stuff." Sarah picked up a photograph. 5 young men on a beach, uniforms dirty, faces exhausted but triumphant. Frank was in the center. "Where was this taken?" Frank's shoulders sagged. "Grenada, 1983. You were there during the invasion?" "Wasn't an invasion. Was a rescue operation." Sarah looked at the medal. "Frank, what is this?" Frank picked it up, wiped it carefully. "Navy Cross." Sarah felt her breath catch. The Navy Cross was second highest award for valor in the United States military. "What did you do?" "My job," he said simply. Saturday morning, Sarah researched Frank Morrison using newspaper archives. After 4 hours, she found a 1984 Navy Times article. "Grenada heroes honored at Pentagon ceremony." The photograph showed 5 Navy sailors receiving decorations. Third from left, unmistakably younger, Frank Morrison. The article revealed everything. Petty Officer Morrison led a small landing party through heavily defended terrain to reach 19 civilians pinned down by hostile fire. Under intense enemy fire, Morrison and his team held position for 6 hours while evacuating civilians to safety. Morrison was wounded twice, but refused medical evacuation until all civilians were secure. One name caught her attention: Petty Officer David Chen. Her maiden name was Chen. Sarah read it 3 times. The quiet janitor had once held position under enemy fire for 6 hours to save 19 strangers. Monday morning, Sarah approached Frank with the printed article. Frank's composure cracked briefly as he recognized the headline. "Where did you find this?" "Navy Times archive." "Frank, why didn't you tell me?" "Because it doesn't matter anymore. You saved 19 lives. How does that not matter?" "That was 40 years ago. The man who did those things isn't the man standing here now." "What happened to the others?" Frank's jaw tightened. "Mitchell died in 1987. Reynolds had a heart attack. Rodriguez never came home from Grenada. PTSD took him." "And David Chen?" Frank looked sharp. "How do you know about Chen?" "He might be my uncle. My father's younger brother who died in military service." Frank smiled genuinely for the first time. "David Chen was the best sailor I ever served with. Always said he wanted his niece to become a teacher and change the world. He saved my life twice." The coincidence felt too meaningful to ignore. "Frank, why are you hiding?" "Because when people know what you've done, they stop seeing who you are. They see a hero. And heroes aren't allowed to be human beings who just want to fix things and take care of people. Would you consider speaking at our Veterans Day assembly?" Frank hesitated. "I'll think about it." Marcus Williams had been listening around the corner. By lunchtime, word spread through the school that their janitor was apparently a war hero. The story spread through Jefferson High like rumors always did. By Tuesday afternoon, every student had heard some version about Mr. Frank being a war hero. Details varied wildly: Navy SEAL, captured battalions, classified missions. But underlying the exaggeration was genuine amazement. Sarah found Frank in the basement, face smudged with grease. "Some kids have been looking at me differently today. How do you feel?" "Terrified. I've been their custodian 15 years. Now they're going to see me as some hero figure." Wednesday morning, something remarkable happened. Sarah found students waiting by Frank's supply closet, not to gawk, but to help. Marcus Williams was there with 3 other kids. When Frank arrived, they fell into step beside him, carrying supplies, asking what needed to be done. No fanfare, no hero worship, just kids showing respect by helping. By Thursday, it became a movement. More students volunteered. Teachers stopped by to say thank you. Frank's 15-year solitary burden was suddenly shared. That afternoon, Sarah found Frank reading a handmade card from third graders. "Thank you, Mr. Frank, for taking care of our school and our country." "This is what David would have wanted," Sarah said. "Your story being told." Frank looked up, eyes wet. "Maybe you're right. So you'll speak at the assembly?" Frank nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I will." November 11th dawned clear and cold. The gymnasium was packed. 800 students, 50 faculty, dozens of parents. Frank Morrison stood at the podium in his navy blue suit, Navy cross pinned to his lapel. "My name is Frank Morrison," he began. "For 15 years, I've been your custodian. Today, Principal Chen asked me to tell you about my other job, the one I had before I came here." For 20 minutes, Frank told his story. Not the sanitized hero's tale, but the truth about fear, split-second decisions, carrying wounded friends to safety, the weight of medals earned through actions he'd rather forget. But mostly he talked about service, about choosing every day to take care of other people, whether medical students trapped on a beach in Grenada or high school kids who needed someone to keep their world functioning. "Heroes don't become heroes because they're fearless," he concluded. "They become heroes because they choose to act despite their fear. They decide that other people's safety matters more than their own comfort. You don't need a uniform to serve. You don't need a medal to be a hero. You just need to care about something beyond yourself and be willing to work for it every single day." When he finished, the gymnasium was silent. Then Marcus Williams stood up, then another student. Soon the entire assembly was on its feet, standing in respectful silence for a man who'd spent 40 years serving others, 6 hours under enemy fire, 15 years with a mop and wrench. Frank Morrison had finally stepped out of the shadows. Some heroes wear uniforms. Some carry weapons. Some receive medals and national recognition, and some push mop buckets at 5:30 a.m., fixing broken things and taking care of people who never think to ask their names. Frank Morrison had been all of these things. But mostly, he had been exactly what his community needed. A quiet man who understood that the most important battles are often fought in places where no one will ever write newspaper articles about them. The greatest heroes, it turned out, were the ones who served without needing to be seen. 6 months later, Frank still mopped the same hallways. But now he talked to students who stopped to help. He shared stories of service and sacrifice. And in his office, the Navy Cross hung proudly on the wall, not as decoration, but as a reminder that heroism comes in many forms. The invisible man had become visible, and Jefferson High was forever changed. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like Frank Morrison's deserve to be heard, subscribe to One Human, One Story. We're here to honor the quiet heroes who walk among us every day, carrying stories that the world needs to remember. Their silence was earned. Now it's time we speak for them.